All right, so you really want to get the inside scoop on this whole U.S.-China trade war thing, right?
Yeah.
Not just like the surface level stuff you see, but like what's actually going on underneath.
Right, the deeper currents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we're diving deep today.
Okay, let's do it.
With this book, Trade Wars Are Class Wars
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
by Klein and Pettis.
Okay.
And this book is seriously blowing my mind
Really?
because it's making the argument that trade wars aren't just about countries battling it out. They're actually like symptoms of a much bigger conflict,
Oh, wow.
a global class war.
Whoa, okay.
Between who, though? The ultra-rich and basically everyone else.
So like the 1% versus everyone else?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a wild idea.
I know, it's a fascinating premise.
It is.
And they really connect the dots between trade, inequality, and how money flows around the world.
That's cool. I mean, I've never really thought about it like that before.
I know, me neither.
But it makes sense
Right.
when you think about it.
And they're arguing that this specific trade war between the U.S. and China
Yeah.
is actually coming from these much deeper tensions.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, to understand what's happening between the U.S. and China, we kind of have to like zoom out
Okay.
and look at how trade has changed over time.
Makes sense.
So like way back when,
Right back to the basics.
remember Adam Smith
Oh, yeah, vaguely.
and his pin factory example?
I feel like that was Econ 101 or something.
I think it was for me too.
Yeah.
But how does that even relate to these trade wars we're seeing today?
Well, I mean, Smith's big idea was that specialization makes things more efficient.
Right.
And that's supposed to be good for everyone.
So everyone wins.
In theory, yes.
Ah, got
But then things got a little bit more complicated
so
with
that's-
Ricardo's idea of comparative advantage.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that term before, but
Yeah, it's basically the idea that countries should focus on producing what they're most efficient at, even if another country could technically do it better.
interesting.
And then you've got people like Alexander Hamilton,
Oh, right.
who argued for protecting new industries.
Even if it went against like free trade.
Exactly, even if it meant kind of bending the rules a little.
So are you saying that we're still having those same debates today?
Oh, absolutely.
Like especially between the U.S. and China?
Yeah, I mean, those arguments are still playing out on the world stage.
But trade is way more complicated now than it was back then, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the scale of it, the complexity, it's mind-boggling.
Like what kind of stuff are you talking about?
Well, for starters, we've had this massive container revolution.
The containers, you mean like the metal boxes?
Exactly, those unassuming metal
I
boxes.
mean, they're literally everywhere.
They are.
What's so revolutionary about them, though?
They've made shipping goods around the world incredibly cheap and efficient.
Huh. So that's why we see them everywhere.
It's a big part of it.
Okay, but how does that tie into the whole U.S.-China trade war thing?
Well, those containers basically supercharge the global economy.
Supercharged.
Yeah, we have these incredibly complex global supply chains now.
Oh.
So like take an iPhone, for example.
Okay.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're finding value in what I'm sharing, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on all my latest content. And don't forget to tap the notification bell. That way, you'll get a heads up every time a new video drops, so you won't miss a thing. Plus, it really helps the channel grow. So thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and let's keep growing this amazing community together.
It gets assembled in China, right?
Right.
But the parts come from all over the world.
So it's not really just a made-in-China product then?
Exactly. And the way we usually measure trade doesn't really capture that complexity.
So the numbers can be misleading.
Very misleading. It looks like the U.S. is importing a ton of finished goods from China.
Right.
But a lot of the value was actually created somewhere else.
So it's not the whole picture.
Not even close.
Okay, so the trade data can be kind of fuzzy because of these global supply chains.
Exactly.
But what about companies avoiding taxes?
Oh, yeah, that's another layer of complexity.
I mean, how does that even work?
Well, multinational corporations have become really good at shifting their profits around.
Shifting their profits?
Yeah, to places with lower taxes.
Like where?
Tax havens, think like Ireland, Luxembourg, places like that.
Okay, but how do they actually do that?
So let's say a U.S. tech company sets up a subsidiary in Ireland.
Where the taxes are lower.
Exactly, much lower.
Okay,
They can then funnel their profits through that subsidiary,
so it looks like the profits were made in Ireland.
even though most of the actual business happened in the U.S.
Whoa, that's wild.
It's a bit of a shell game,
It is, for sure.
and it makes it really hard to see who's actually benefiting from trade.
So it's distorting the whole picture.
Big time.
And how does this impact the U.S.-China trade situation specifically?
Well, it makes the U.S. trade deficit with China look way bigger than it actually is.
Okay.
Because companies are using these tax havens to hide the real flow of money.
So it's like a smokescreen.
It is, and it makes it harder to address the real problems driving the trade war.
So we've got misleading trade data because of global supply chains and tax havens.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the actual differences between how the U.S. and China run their economies?
Right, because their models are pretty different.
Yeah, totally different.
And that creates some serious tension.
Like what kind of tension are we talking about?
Well, you've got China, a high savings economy that's really focused on exports.
Yep.
And then you've got the U.S., a high wage economy that relies a lot on consumption.
Okay.
And those two models create imbalances in the global economy.
Imbalances.
Yeah, and that leads to trade conflicts.
But can't countries just focus on what they're good at and then trade freely?
Well, in theory, yes.
But
But when a country saves way more than it invests domestically, it creates a surplus of goods.
So like too much stuff.
Exactly, and that stuff has to go somewhere.
So other countries have to buy it.
Exactly, and that can actually be a problem.
Really? How?
It can lead to a glut of goods.
A glut.
Yeah, it's like an oversupply, which drives prices down.
Okay.
And it puts a lot of pressure on the countries that have to absorb all those goods.
I see.
It's not as simple as just trade freely.
So are you saying that China's high savings rate is creating this glut?
Yeah, they're pushing out a ton of goods onto the global market.
And the U.S. is basically stuck buying them.
Well, the U.S. has a huge consumer market.
Right. We love to shop.
And so it becomes the main destination for all those Chinese goods.
Which leads to our trade deficit with China.
Exactly. And that's where the trade war gets really interesting.
Okay. I'm definitely hooked. Tell me more.
The book argues that China's economic rise has been incredible.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's created a unique set of challenges for the world economy.
Okay.
Their model, focused on investment and exports.
Right.
It's led to those massive trade surpluses we talked about.
So basically, they're selling way more to the world than they're buying.
Exactly. And that creates tension.
How so?
It forces other countries, especially the U.S.,
Yeah.
to run deficits.
Oh, I see, because we're buying all their stuff.
Right. For decades, the U.S. has absorbed these surpluses. We
Right.
become like the world's consumer of last resort.
The consumer of last resort. What does that even mean?
It means we buy up all the excess stuff. And that's where the exorbitant burden comes in.
Exorbitant burden. Okay, that sounds intense.
It is. It's the downside of having the world's dominant currency.
Wait, so the U.S. dollar being so powerful is actually a bad thing?
Well, it has its downsides.
Like what?
Think about it, because the dollar is the global reserve currency.
Mm-hmm.
There's this constant demand for U.S. assets like treasury bonds.
Okay.
This lets the U.S. borrow money cheaply and finance its huge trade deficit.
So it's like we're able to keep buying all this stuff because the dollar's so strong.
Right, but it also means that American industries face constant pressure from cheaper imports.
Because other countries can make things cheaper.
Exactly, and that can lead to job losses and stagnant wages for U.S. workers.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
It is. We're propping up the global economy, but also taking a hit in the process.
That doesn't seem very fair.
And the book argues that it's not sustainable.
Okay.
It's fueling resentment in the U.S.
Makes sense.
and contributing to protectionist policies.
Like the tariffs Trump imposed.
Mhm.
So China's policies are putting pressure on the U.S. economy.
Yeah, but it's not just China.
Oh, right. You mentioned Germany earlier,
Mhm.
but I thought Germany was like the model economy.
That's the interesting thing about this book.
What is it?
It challenges that perception.
Really? How so?
While Germany has a strong economy,
Yeah.
the authors argue that their success comes at a cost to the global economy.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's not so obvious at first glance.
So what are they doing that's so bad?
Well, they're really focused on competitiveness,
Okay.
which has led to wage suppression
Okay.
and an excessive focus on exports.
So kind of like China.
Exactly. And this creates another source of surplus savings.
Oh, so Germany is contributing to this global savings glut too.
Yep. And here's the thing.
What?
Both China and Germany benefit from the U.S. acting as the world's shock absorber.
Shock absorber. What do you mean by that?
We soak up those excess savings.
By buying their stuff.
Exactly. The U.S. becomes the market of last resort.
Wow. So we're basically keeping their economies afloat.
In a way, yes.
And that allows them to keep growing through exports.
Precisely.
This is getting really complicated.
It is a bit of a tangled web.
So where do we go from here? Can the U.S. just force China and Germany to change?
That's where things get tricky.
Okay.
The book suggests some solutions,
Like what?
but they're not easy.
I bet.
For the U.S., it might mean considering capital controls.
Capital controls, what are those?
It means restricting the flow of foreign investment.
Whoa, that sounds pretty extreme.
It's controversial, for sure.
I can imagine, wouldn't that go against free trade?
It would definitely be a departure.
Yeah.
But the authors argue it might be necessary to protect the U.S. economy,
Okay.
to level the playing field and make sure American workers aren't getting screwed.
So capital controls are at least on the table.
Hypothetically, yes.
What about China and Germany? What can they do to fix things?
Well, for China,
Yeah.
it would probably involve shifting away from their export-dependent model.
So not just making things for everyone else.
Right, they'd need to focus more on boosting domestic demand.
So making life better for their own people.
Exactly. But that would require some major reform.
Like what kind of reforms?
Strengthening social safety nets, raising wages, allowing their currency to appreciate more freely.
So basically, they'd have to change their whole economic philosophy.
It would be a pretty big shift.
But wouldn't that make sense in the long run?
It would, logically,
Yeah.
but whether their government would actually do it is another question.
Right. I see your point.
And for Germany,
Yeah.
the solution might involve increasing domestic demand
Okay.
through government spending on infrastructure and social programs.
So investing in their own people and their own economy.
Yeah, instead of relying so much on exports.
Makes sense. But again, how do you actually make them do that?
That's the challenge. The authors suggest some kind of global agreement,
Like a big international treaty?
something like that, to address these imbalances.
So everyone would have to agree to work together.
It would require a lot of cooperation.
Yeah, I could see that being a tough sell.
It would be a major undertaking.
But you know what? This whole conversation
Yeah.
is really opened my eyes to how interconnected everything is.
It's all linked together.
Yeah, trade inequality, global power dynamics.
It's a complex system.
It's not just about tariffs and trade deficits.
Right, it's much deeper than that.
It's about the whole structure of the global economy.
It really makes you think.
It feels like we're talking about this giant economic puzzle,
Oh, yeah,
and the pieces are scattered all over the place.
definitely.
But the book is saying that the trade war, it's just one symptom
Okay.
of a much bigger problem,
And that is,
this global class war.
right, the one that's driving all this inequality and instability.
Exactly, and making things so messed up.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not just an economic problem then.
It's not. It's social, it's political, it's all connected.
So who's actually benefiting from this system?
And who's paying the price?
Right, because
Well-
someone's always got to...
And the book makes a really strong case that it's working people,
Yeah.
both in the U.S. and around the world.
Who are getting the short end of the stick.
It seems like it.
So, okay, we've talked about the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to fix it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Can we rewrite the rules
Yeah.
and make things more fair?
Well, the book does have some interesting ideas,
Oh, really? Like what?
but they're not easy solutions.
I bet.
One idea they talk about is a new global reserve asset.
A new reserve asset.
Yeah, something like Keynes proposed back in the day.
I don't remember that one.
It was called the Bancor.
The Bancor. Okay.
And it could potentially help with these imbalances.
Okay.
And we wouldn't have to rely so much on the U.S. dollar.
Wait, are you talking about a whole new global currency?
It's a possibility. Something to think about.
I mean, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's an interesting idea.
It is, but why would we need that?
Well, the dollar being the dominant currency, it gives the U.S. a lot of power,
Right. We've talked about that.
but it also creates vulnerabilities.
I see.
A more diversified system could be more stable.
And more fair.
Exactly.
But realistically, how would that even happen?
It would require a lot of global cooperation,
Yeah, like a ton.
and there's no guarantee that everyone would agree.
So basically, it's a long shot.
It's a long shot, but the book makes a good point.
What's that?
We can't just keep doing what we're doing.
Because it's not working.
Exactly. The current system is unsustainable.
Economically and politically.
Off.
So what can regular people do?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like these problems are so huge.
Right. Like, how can we even make a difference?
Well, the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Understanding the issues and how they affect us.
That's fair.
And then we can start demanding better from our leaders.
Okay.
Supporting policies that are fair and sustainable.
Right.
And holding corporations accountable.
So basically, we need to get informed and get involved.
Exactly. Use your voice push for change.
It's not hopeless then.
Not at all. We have more power than we think.
I like that.
It's not just about being passive bystanders.
Right. We can actually do something.
We can shape the future.
If we choose to.
Exactly.
Wow, this whole conversation has been incredibly eye-opening.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. I had no idea how much I didn't know about trade and inequality and everything.
It's complex stuff.
But it's so important.
It really is.
This book, Trade Wars Are Class Wars.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's really challenged my assumptions
Me too.
about how the world works.
It definitely makes you think differently.
It does, and it makes you realize that we have choices to make.
About the kind of world we want to live in.
Yeah, for ourselves and for future generations.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And keep those minds curious.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. I've got a lot more coming your way, and I'd love for you to be part of this journey with me. And if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.